Welcome to the Pathways to Success. I'm Julian Placino, recruiting professional turned success speaker, show host, and media entrepreneur. This show is dedicated to helping you find your unique pathway to success by having conversations that educate, inspire, and transform. Together, we'll interview some of the world's greatest leaders and uncover their secrets to success. Thanks for tuning in, and on to the show. Welcome to episode 209 of the Pathways to Success, where we have conversations with inspiring leaders about their business and keys to success. I'm Julian Placino, your host, and we have an outstanding show in store for you today. Today's episode is sponsored by City Central. City Central offers innovative workspaces for your business to thrive. Make sure to use the promo code PATHWAYS for 50% off your first 3 months. So check out City Central at citycentral.com. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the Pathways to Success my friend Victor Calabrese, president at DeskSide. Victor, welcome back to the Pathways to Success. How are you, man?
It's awesome to be back. This is definitely a big change from last time, digging the new setup.
It is great to be with you again. And I looked, it was a little over a year ago, September 7th, 2020. So I'm excited to catch up and find out what's new with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
So Victor, you are now the president at DeskSide. Tell us, what is DeskSide?
So the way I like to explain DeskSide is that we are the evolution of the MSP. So we've taken the best parts of the MSP and the best parts, and MSP is a managed service provider, and then the parts of an MSSP, which is a managed security service provider. We join those together to come up with what we call a technology success partner, or a TSP. That's what DeskSide does.
So why now? I'm always curious about the origin story of a business, right? So as you and I learned together, what you educated me on, there's a lot of MSPs out there. So what is the origin story of DeskSide?
Yeah, there's like 400 MSPs in the Dallas Metroplex alone. Imagine what it is in the United States. But I've been part of this tech game or this industry for a long time, plus 20 years. And back in 2009, I was with an MSP, and I went up the ranks of that MSP and grew with them, and eventually I helped the owners exit. During that time, I learned everything there is to know about the managed services world. And I saw a lot of things that weren't quite right. So after we exited that, I took a year off and we started thinking about what the next thing is, and we started creating DeskSide on paper. And today, DeskSide is born from that want of making the industry better, to actually have the next evolution.
So I'm curious about that. I want to learn a little bit more about the industry. We'll for sure talk more about DeskSide and some of the differences that you have. But you've been very vocal about it too. And I love you because you're so passionate about what you do. But you mentioned you have some frustrations with the way the industry has done certain things. So I'm curious, what causes that frustration in your view?
The biggest frustration I have is that the industry, although it started from a good part or a good point, it's gotten to the point now where the industry is more focused on the MSP itself and growing the margins and growing the relationships, and they have this whole little tight community with each other, that I think the clients are getting left behind. And it's the sad truth that a lot of the things that are being done out there by these MSPs are not really for the benefit of the client. They're for the benefit of the sticky factor, right? How do we make this client more sticky so they're harder for them to leave? Or how do I increase my margins? Let's throw something else out there to get to the clients. Not, let's talk about what the business problems are that these clients have, and let's find the technological solutions to overcome those problems. They can become a more efficient, a better company. And that's really the biggest frustration I have around that.
Interesting. So when I think of IT, a lot of times it's kind of a thankless job, I think, because when an employee walks into a company, all these systems are just kind of there. It didn't happen magically. There was an origin of how that was, enabled within the organization. So make the case. Why should business leaders look closer at their existing MSP?
So that's a great question. A lot of business owners, unfortunately, they're stuck with the fact that, yeah, this stuff looks like magic. We just make it work, right? But the reality of it is that there is a lot of back-end function. There is a lot of back-end things that we do on a regular basis to keep those systems up. But that's only half the battle. The piece that the business owners and CEOs are missing a lot of times is they're looking at MSPs as who can do it for the cheapest rate. right? What's the lowest rate? That's not always the best solution. The best MSPs out there are not the ones that are going to give you the cheapest rates and going to beat out every other competitor out there. It's really the person that can sit at the table with the business owners and come up and talk business with them, because business is key here, right? Understand the P&L, understand the financials, understand the operations, understand all the things that make a business, and then take their technological acumen, bring it to the table and say, these are the things we think you should do to automate this process or to make this process more efficient. And that's how the business is. But CEOs are not doing that. A lot of CEOs are actually looking at it from just a financial perspective.
So what do you think they generally overlook or miss when it comes to selecting their MSP or taking a deeper dive into their existing one?
So a lot of the things that they're missing is the security aspect of the MSP. That's a really, really big one. The relationships they have with their vendors, and the depth of talent that they have within their ranks. So those are the three big ones that they have. Because a lot of times what ends up happening, you get a salesperson, and they always have a salesperson that can sell. And then they'll have a technical account manager, someone that could really talk the tech talk and like wow the client. And all of a sudden they got the contract. But what about everybody else in the back end? What about the tools that these people are using? What about the tools that they're using in their own companies? Like, how secure is your MSP? Forget about how secure and how much things they're throwing at you, but what about them themselves? How secure are they?
So what would you say are the most important questions a CEO should ask themselves about their company to really understand further this whole conversation about MSP?
I'd flip the table on them, right? Mm-hmm. So every single question they ask you about, for instance, how secure are you? Are you using MFA? I would flip all those questions on them. It's like, are you guys using MFA? What kind of MFA are you using? What kind of people, what kind of talent do you have? So you'll see that a salesperson will come in and they'll have like a little checklist of the things that they need to get done, right? Do you have how many servers, how many computers? And that right there is the first clue that they are a traditional MSP. Which was just checking off the list of how many servers you have, how many computers you have. They're putting together a price in that meeting. That's not what that meeting should be about. That meeting should be about talking about the pain points, right? What is it about your current provider? What is it about your current IT staff that's not working well for you, right? Let's talk about those things. We'll figure out the money. We'll figure out how much this stuff costs. We'll figure out the things that we need to do. But the real thing is, what is the pain? What are the problems in the business? And from there, you could have a good conversation.
What would you say is a good litmus test a CEO could run, maybe with their existing MSP, as far as, can I trust my MSP?
So that's a great question, and we're actually developing some tools on our site. I was hoping that would be ready for today, but they're complicated tools. But there are questions that you can ask, and there are tools that you could use to actually see if the MSP or the IT department is doing the things they're saying they're doing, right? And by asking simple questions, for instance, about what kind of security features they have, they're using to protect their clients, they're using to protect themselves. There's things that are a little higher level. We're trying to make them easier because, see, that's the problem is a lot of IT companies are hiding behind the tech itself. So they're talking above the people's understanding of the technology. So people have to trust them. And that's the big key word out there is I'm your trusted advisor. Well, you know, because you're relationship selling, that's a lot easier to do because you're selling on a relationship instead of selling on what you're actually doing. But if you look at the things that you're doing, and we're going to put out those tools, give me another month and we'll have them out there, you can actually start seeing what is that they're saying they're supposed to be doing and what they're actually doing.
Here's something else that I deeply appreciate you personally is that you're like a tech guy, but you're a business guy. You understand how technology can affect business outcomes. So make the case for this also, Vic. How does optimizing IT optimize one's business? Yeah,
no, it's a great question. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And honestly, I was a tech guy, right? You know, I was in the trenches working on servers back in the day. And then little by little, I stepped away from that and started growing my business knowledge. And today, my real drive is to go in there and find these business or these operational problems or issues or things that we can make better, and then put technology behind it in order to automate or make it more efficient. And those are the things that you can really start doing it, because if you take technology to more than just monitoring and making sure your backups are happening and making sure your updates and getting your computer, if you take it beyond that point, you can actually start making your people more efficient. You could start making your processes more efficient. You could actually start driving money to your bottom line because you could increase efficiencies. And there's a bunch of ways to do that. We've done it from saving money on a simple telecom, switching from one thing to like a VoIP solution, which is not that difficult. Just looking at, you don't know how many people have internet service that they haven't looked at in years.
Yeah.
Internet service should be looked at every single year because the prices continuously drop and the amount of speeds that you get continues to go up. But nobody's checking these things out, right? So there's like money on the table, and there's an infinite amount of places that you can do that with software, with different types of email services. Today with the cloud, the cloud's a huge advantage for business. There is no business out there that is starting today that is starting with a metal box in their office. Nobody does it. And I'm talking about businesses that are enterprise level at a certain point, right? Venture-backed businesses. Everybody's using SaaS solutions. Everybody's using cloud solutions. And there's still people that are stuck in the infancy where they have servers on site and they're stuck with all this old technology that we can get rid of. And unfortunately, the reason why they're stuck is because their MSP wants them to be stuck. Because there's a lot more profit for them to sit there instead of digitally transform that, get rid of all that capital expenditure, put it on the operational side, and all of a sudden that business is going to gain the momentum that it should be getting.
What would you say is the single most impressive business outcome that you have seen as a result of auditing your MSP or even making a complete switch?
We have, and this is even before Desk Side, right? I have walked into numerous, and I can't even begin to count how many companies where they were vulnerable. I mean, I'm talking about open ports on firewalls, unpatched machines, and this is stuff that their MSP was doing, right? They were paying for them to be doing this stuff, which is a whole different argument. None of this stuff was happening. We would onboard these people, and I've had backups that weren't running for years. I mean, serious issues that can take the company down. Unfortunately, a lot of IT is like an insurance policy. You don't really need it until you need it, right? And these companies got away, they got lucky in essence because they didn't have a crypto attack or they didn't have a situation where that vulnerability was exploited. But that happens all the time. The MSPs do hide behind it. IT departments hide behind it because they're saying they're busy, they can't get to it, but they're never going to tell you that sort of stuff. So it's hidden in the ground. A lot of things that are happening today. The insurance companies are getting wise to it, and you'll see there's checklists that are going out every single time you go to renew your policy. Now you got to have a checklist. Are you doing this? Is your server room locked? Are you changing your passwords on a regular basis? What is the length of your passwords? Are you using MFA? All this stuff is being checked by the insurance company. Unfortunately, not the best method of verifying because it's a checklist, and a lot of MSPs, you know who you are lying on those things. So it's really not helpful, and the business owners are none the wiser because they're sending this little Excel spreadsheet, they're checking everything off, they're sending it back, and all of a sudden they get the insurance policy, they're covered, which is another problem because are they covered? Because if you do get an attack and you go and put a claim in and they come back and see that you weren't doing any of this stuff, they're not going to honor that claim.
There's a lot there, man, that's awesome. So Victor, before we start talking a little bit more about Desk Side, if there was one more piece of education that you would want customers and clients to know when it comes to MSPs, the industry, what's that thing that you want to share?
I really, and coming on this show, I was really not happy about the message that I was going to say because I don't want to oust the MSPs. That's not my purpose. I mean, honestly, there's plenty of businesses out there. Desk Side can't help every single one, right? And it's impossible. It's never going to happen. My thing is to be what AIO was back in the day. They were like the leader of the industry. They did a lot of things because there was a point where the industry went from time and material into this MSP, which is a monthly recurring kind of fee structure, and they were leading that. I want Desk Side to be that leader now, and that's the one thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make everybody wake up. Like the CEOs, the MSPs, guys, we got to do better. There's 10 hackers for every one good guy, right? So they got the numbers on us. So we have to be smarter. And how are we smarter? By doing the things we're supposed to be doing, by getting smart about how we implement those things, by getting smart about how much this stuff really costs and how much you're willing to expose yourself to, right? What's your risk tolerance? And that's the sort of thing that we need to talk to.
So let's jump in to desk side. You are not an MSP, you are a TSP. What does this mean and why should it matter?
So, like I was saying before, the industry started with a break-fix, time and material kind of model, right? So you had a problem with your computer, you called somebody come on site, they did the work, they fixed it, they went home. So you're constantly putting out fires. Back in 2005, around that part, that started changing to what is an MSP today, right? And what that is a monthly reoccurring, so you pay per month on a certain amount of money to make sure that your computers are always patched, to make sure that everything is functioning. If you have a problem, you have someone to call, they would come on site. That's the MSP. Then there was a fork around 2015, around those parts, where security started becoming its own animal, right? So at a certain point, especially when the cloud came to a certain point, there was a fork where security started taking such a difference that you needed a certain level of talent, a certain level of person to be able to handle it. And unfortunately, the one thing that happened is the MSP world split into two. Now there's an MSP, managed service provider, and an MSSP, which is a managed security service provider.
So what an MSP does, but with an emphasis on security?
On security. Well,
okay, gotcha.
It's not. That's the problem. So you got this MSP, right, that's taking care of your infrastructure, and you've got this MSSP that's taking care of your security. Well, that's kind of stupid.
Oh, they're
right?
separate.
They're separate.
Oh, got it.
Right?
Okay.
And you have this MSP that's actually contracting this guy to come in and help him with the security stuff. Right?
Gotcha. Okay.
So,
right.
And it's like this doesn't work, right? And there is some MSPs. I'm not saying that. I'm not painting a broad stroke here where everybody's in the same boat, right? There is some that are similar to desk side. So when we saw this, we're like, that's not going to work. You can't have your security guy not understand your infrastructure, not be part of that, and you can't have your infrastructure people depending just on security people without knowing everything. Everything's got to come together, and that's when we came up with this TSP. On top of the fact that the TSP, Technology Success Partner, is really around understanding business processes and then putting technology to solve those problems.
So you're combining the two and focusing it on solving business problems.
That's right.
Got it. So I know one of the things that desk side is very strong at, and one of the things that you're passionate about speaking on is security. And there's a quote here I want to read that I want you to further explain, because security is a big thing. You said MSPs are nice, shiny objects for hackers. What does that mean?
So let's start talking a little bit about the tools that MSP use. The traditional tools that MSP uses is for all intents and purposes, it's called an RMM. But the RMM has an agent. You install these agents on everything, right?
And an RMM, just so our viewers understand, it's
a remote monitoring management system.
Got it. Okay.
And so, and all it's doing is it's keeping an eye on all your stuff. It's making sure that it's functioning, and if there's something that the MSP wants to do, they could actually push that onto those computers. The problem is that you're installing an agent on every single one of these machines. Okay. That agent has access to everything on that machine. So now the MSP has the keys to your kingdom, everything, which in essence is, Victor, your MSP is supposed to have access, it's supposed to be taking care of my computers. Yeah, but the problem is that if the MSP himself or herself is not securing their environment, right? They're not putting all the protocols and the things in place to make sure their environment is secure. A hacker hacks them, Kaseya, SolarWinds. Those hacks happened. There was a reason why they went after those. They hack them, and guess what? All of a sudden, you have access to 100 clients.
Wow.
Right? So the hackers is like, this is great. I'm not going to waste my time 100 to try to get into one company when I can go after an MSP and go after all of them.
Wow. And how is desk side's approach different to this?
So, and it's funny because enterprises tend to lead a lot of times in the way they do things, and in this case, it happens to be true. Enterprises don't use any of these RMMs. They've actually evolved out of them. Any company that starts today that gets to a certain level, or even the smaller companies, aren't using RMMs. What they're using is different systems, independent systems for specific jobs, right? So instead of having a one thing does it all. They have specific systems that do specific functions within the environment. Now what ends up happening is if that hack happens on the MSP side, they can't get to everything, because the MSP has independent credentials. And those credentials are not necessarily ours, which is another big differentiator. Those credentials are the client's. So we set up those different things, the monitoring or the antivirus or anything that you could think of, keep it under the client's credentials. If the client says, Victor, I don't want to work with you anymore, that's great. Here's your credentials, and we walk away the next day. With an MSP, you can't do that. That's one of the reasons why they love it, because of that sticky factor I was talking about. With an MSP, there's pain to move, because you have to actually get the MSP to remove all this stuff. The minute he or she removes all this stuff, you have to put somebody else in place if you're going to use the same model, or you got to go and buy your own stuff. That is a painful process. Anytime you onboard or offboard a client, it's a lot of work, and there's a window of opportunity there, or a window of liability, I should say, for the client.
So that sounds like there's a lot more work on your part doing each individual kind of function for your clients, right? I mean, does that create?
Yeah, absolutely. So and that's the biggest problem. So you have to understand the way an MSP is able to price themselves so low is by having this one-to-many relationships. Because now they could have less techs, because it's going to take less techs. They're going to need less techs that have specialties, because you don't need to be a specialist in anything. That software is doing everything for you. And you have less time to do all this work, because you install that one agent and you're pretty much done. Then you just take a template that you're using for every single one of your clients and you put it on there, and all of a sudden that client becomes cookie cutter like the rest of them. My way, yeah, you're absolutely right, but it's the right way, unfortunately. It's the way that it needs to be done, is you set up individual systems for specific things to make sure that that client has what they need. But yeah, absolutely takes more time. That's one of the things that you'll see. Price-wise, you're going to have a difference in price for an MSP as compared to a TSP.
Gotcha. And you mentioned that some MSPs lack basic security principles for themselves.
Yep.
What are those basic security principles?
So MSPs are always pushing things. They're going to their clients, oh, you need this, you need MFA, you need different things, you need a firewall. They're pushing all this stuff. But the reality of it is that a lot of these MSPs aren't doing those things for themselves. So I always, and if you watch any of my videos, you always hear me say that security needs to be a layered approach. Okay, and depending on how much your risk tolerance is, you can have more or less layers to protect yourself. And MSP do a really good job of pitching that to their clients, but they're not doing that for themselves. You know, something like MFA is, and MFA for people who may not know is a multi-factor authentication. In essence, you have credentials, a username and password, but before you can gain access to whatever you're gaining access, you're going to get a third password from some source, whether that's a text message or an email or a YubiKey key or a app. One of those things will give you another password. A lot of MSPs are just not doing it. So, and it's because it's not easy to do. A lot of the software that they have, a lot of the vendors that they use don't have that on their platforms. They're really slow to adopt these things because it's painful.
So another point also is this idea of being vendor agnostic. What does that mean, and why should that matter to a company?
and it's another funny thing. MSPs love to say that they're vendor agnostic, and it's not true, right? Vendor agnostic to me is that I don't care what vendor is needed for the solution, right? A lot of MSPs sign vendor agreements so that the more they sell with a specific vendor, the more margin they make. So obviously it makes sense for them from a financial perspective to go out there and sell as much as they can of one vendor. It also makes it easier for them to train their staff to use all the same stuff, right? Because it's one vendor. But is that really the right thing to do for the client? Right? I mean, something as simple as Office 365 as compared to G Suite, they have differences, and they both have great advantages and disadvantages, right? Why should I become an Office 365 vendor, right, and pitch that to all my clients when G Suite has some advantages? Some clients may take advantage of that. So that's really vendor agnostics. That side is one of those companies that doesn't care about the vendor necessarily. There's a lot of great vendors out there. I'm more concerned about the business issue and what's the best application for the best price that would solve the problem for the client.
So what I've heard in this piece is vendor agnostic, the tools, individual tools, and also security, and also really focused on the business. What else would you say kind of wraps up this idea of a TSP and also the desk side difference?
So those are the three big ones. I mean, the other one that we can really talk about is the automation process. Once you get to a certain level and you're able to take advantage of other things, right? So like, for instance, the digital transformation of taking everything from a point of hardware servers on site, putting them all into the cloud. Once you have that infrastructure in place, you can take advantage of a lot more stuff if you know how to interconnect everything. The world has changed now to a level of API interfaces, and API interfaces are little pieces of code that allow systems to talk to each other, right? If you do things correctly, right? If you have your domain set up correctly, if you have your server set up correctly, you can now take advantage of a whole slew of new technology that will make your business better. And that side is really key about that, like making sure that the foundation is set up correctly, making sure that the company is going in the right trajectory. And once we're there, now the foundation is built, I could build you a 100-story building, no problem.
So, Vic, before we learn more about you as the president of DeskSide, what else would you want to share with our audience about DeskSide before we jump into that?
It's back to the point that I made before. I'm not really here to beat up on the MSP world. I am here to make light of what's going on out there because I'm frankly just sick of it. The taking advantage of the client has just gone too far. But I hope that DeskSide becomes a shining light. And there's other companies out there that are doing similar things to what we're doing. I'm just hoping that coming out here, seeing what we're doing, will get some of the other MSPs to be excited about the potential of changing this industry. Just like we went from T&M over into the managed services space, now let's go from the MSP to the TSP space.
I love it. Victor, I want to jump into your keys to success. The show is called The Pathways to Success because I believe that success leaves clues. We've all heard that. You've done such incredible things in your career, and I want to know, what are the things that you've done sort of uniquely different that allowed you to achieve the success that you have today? So the first piece is this: take care of your health. Like, I'm not sure if a lot of people here know this, but you were, can I say obese?
Yeah,
is that okay?
absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
Obese.
So what is the weight loss story? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I was 350 pounds with, I think, a 55 BMI back in, it was before 2000. So yeah, my journey with weight and health has been a roller coaster, like many other people, right? You know, there's many people that suffer. But I've learned a lot. Health is a complicated subject because it's not only the weight, right? It's not only the working out, it's the nutrition side of it. It's your mental health. There's a lot of pieces to health, at least the way I understand it. So yeah, I did the whole weight loss stuff. It took me a very long time. It wasn't easy. Dealt with a lot of consequences for all the things that I did. But in that period, I've learned that if you don't take care of your health, there's very little that you're going to be able to accomplish in life. And there's many, many stories out there of people that have accomplished a lot only not to be able to enjoy it because they're dead, right? So you take care of yourself is one of the most important things you can do. Then you can take care of so many other things. The other thing, and it's going to be something that we're going to talk more about in the future, is accessing your true potential. So health is a piece that allows you. There's something I'm working on that actually starts talking about how someone actually accesses their true potential, the person that's on the inside, right? The person that comes out every so often and kind of, wow, that was me talking? So that person. And everybody has it. I know that some people have access to it better than others, but health is a really big part of being able to access that.
So what would you say are the most impactful things you have been doing recently to take care of your physical, mental health?
So the biggest thing is move. So I know it sounds easy, but, and I could, like, and there's some people out there, it's like, oh, I'm obese, so I have this, or I have that. Listen, guys, I was 350 pounds. I had a hard time getting up from the couch. That's how bad I was, right? And what I ended up doing was I used to stand up, take a walk, come back, sit down, rest. Next day, instead of taking a 5-minute walk, it was a 10-minute walk. then it was a 15-minute walk. And little by little, you just increment it to the point that you start getting to the gym, you start getting on your Peloton, you start getting on something, and you make it a routine. Once you make that into a healthy routine that you're moving around, you'll see it get easier, and you'll see everything will start changing.
What was the mental shift you made? The hardest thing that I've seen when it comes to change is taking that first step, going from 0 to 1. What happened here to make you take that first step and build exercise and nutrition and all those health habits into a habit?
So if people that have heard the other podcast about the failure, right? I said I failed. The thing that changed with me is that I failed. I made a really stupid mistake. I had gastric bypass. That gastric bypass caused me to visit a lot of internal things in my mind, right? And I came to the conclusion that I tried to solve a physical problem for something that's mental. And that shift, understanding that it's up here, and it had nothing to do with actually how much I was eating or how much I didn't work out. All the stuff was up here. And me cutting myself open and having that surgery to try to fix something that was psychological was a mistake. Once I realized that the problem was psychological, well, then you take different actions to it, right? You start talking about meditation, you start talking about how do I change, positive affirmations, you start doing things like that in your life, and those things actually over time will help you deal with the physical.
So if there was one piece of advice you could give anyone here in our audience struggling with that, whatever it takes to make that first step to begin a transformation, what's that advice for them? Just
take the first step. It's literally that. So a baby, doesn't crawl right away. They move around, and then eventually they start crawling, and then eventually they take a step. Take a lesson from a baby, and that's exactly. It's not about going on a 2,000 calorie diet today, right? Just eat one less meal. Do one more thing. Go for an extra walk, and tomorrow just do a little more. Do 5-10% more, and you'll see over time that starts building up on itself, and you'll see that you start making progress.
You're passionate about learning. As a matter of fact, that's how you and I met. We're at Landmark, that personal development forum, and Vic, just being your friend has really changed my life. It introduced us to all the guys at Vistage, and I'm so glad that you're my friend. But why are you so passionate about this idea of never stop learning? Make the case for that. That can easily be dismissed as a platitude. Sure, everyone does that, but why does that mean something different to you?
So learning to me is like exercise for the mind. So you have exercise for the body and you have exercise for the mind. And just like I preached all the time that you need to keep moving, well, you need to keep this moving. And relying on everything you've learned in the past is not exactly helpful. Working, yeah, you get to use your brain, but that neuroplasticity does not happen unless you're building new connections. And those new connections only happen when you're learning. Now, there's a multitude of ways to learn. You don't have to be a reader, right? I try to read a book a month. I don't like physically reading, so what I end up doing is I use Audible and I listen to my books, right? Vistage, that's another great one. I go once a month, but that once a month for a day is a fire hose of information that you're getting. Even if you get 10% of it, you've grown that much more. But that's really what it is. It's that learning for me is no different than exercise for your body.
And the last key to success is cultivate and prune your relationships. I think most of us understand the benefits of developing relationships, but what would you say you've done uniquely different than others that has allowed you to achieve excellence in this regard?
So that's really a hard lesson that I've learned over time. So cultivating and pruning relationships, there's two different pieces. Cultivating relationship, I think that one's easier to grasp for people. Like make sure that you follow up with people, make sure that you're growing the relationship. It doesn't have to be just with your wife or your kids. It's with friends and it's with family. Just cultivate those relationships, business relationships. That I think is the easier one to understand. The pruning is the harder one, right? Especially when it comes to family. It took me a long time to learn, but it's an unfortunate fact that sometimes you have people in your life that do you no good. Nothing good comes out of it. Unfortunately, they are a certain type of person, and you're a different type of person, and that's okay. There's differences everywhere, but you need to cut those people out of your life. Now, with friendships, that's a little easier. With family, it becomes a little harder, and there's little lessons that you have to learn about not so much pruning, but keeping your distance. Exposing yourself only a certain amount of time. All that stuff is helpful with those relationships, because those relationships affect your mental health. And it all comes back to that, health category. It all has one big circle that eventually either you get to the point of being your true potential or you don't. And that's why, you need to cultivate and prune your relationships.
That is excellent advice. Victor, I want to close with a few just kind of fun lightning round questions just so we can kind of get to know a little bit more about your personality. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So the first is, Victor, what's your favorite food?
Oh, pizza.
Pizza. What is your favorite music? What are you listening to here recently?
So I like all types of music. Lately, I've been listening to like Latino club mix. Just that's what's been nice. Oh, mic's not working. But I like all types of music. I go from classical all the way through to dance and party music.
What's something you're really proud of that no one really knows about?
I got 5 kids.
You're fine.
Yeah, I have 5 kids, and they're all growing on their own paths, and I'm very proud of each of them. My son Thomas is in the Air Force Academy right now. Alyssa is in high school still. Alexis just finished a internship at GM, which she got to work at the world's biggest wind tunnel and got to take apart a Corvette. And then I got the little 2 Rugrats, Frankie and Val, which are 8 and 5 years old. They've got their own little path, but that's probably the proudest thing in my life.
Vix, what is one thing that you would like to tell your children that you may not have already told them?
There's lots. I mean, as a parent, you go through your life and you kind of want to, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to start writing a book, is to leave something for my kids, not necessarily to write that book. But there's so much you want to teach them. I mean, the one thing that is something I would love for them to do, and I tell them all the time, is start your own business. Don't go work for somebody unless it's for a short amount of time just to get that experience. I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
But there is such a big difference between being your own boss and being your own person. And these days it's so easy to do.
Victor, we're going to close with one final question. This show is called The Pathways to Success. What is your personal definition of success?
Getting up every day and being happy.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how that happens. It doesn't matter what it is, what that looks like. It doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank. It's all about you wake up and you're happy. You're just happy because you got another day to live.
Victor, tell our audience how to connect with you, follow you on social media, learn more about DeskSide directly right here.
Yeah, so deskside.com is the best way to get to us. We also are on every single channel as DeskSide TSP. LinkedIn is our favorite channel for a lot of reasons. I'm on every single social media channel under either VX Calabrese or VCase. Yeah, that's you can find me pretty much anywhere.
And we'll make sure to have all of your contact information in the show notes as well. So, Victor, delivered as advertised. I appreciate you coming back on the show. I love everything that you're doing, and I really am grateful for our friendship. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Julian.
And everyone else, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of The Pathways to Success. As always, make sure to subscribe, comment, and share. And we'll see you next time on the next episode of The Pathways to Success.